There are few things more satisfying for the DIYer than taking trash and turning it into home decor. So today I thought we'd have some fun. We're going to do some crafting with some old tin cans. We're going to take that trash and turn it into treasure. For this first super simple tin can DIY, we're going to be using some tuna cans. I just got my Kirkland tuna cans that we had for lunch, and you're just going to want to rip the labels off of each of the 3 tin cans. Now, if you're wanting to make this exact DIY, then you're going to want to watch to the end of this video and then look in the description below, and you will find a link to my @Jenny'sPlace free printable library. There you will find this printable plus a whole bunch more. Now, this printable was sized to fit perfectly around a tuna tin can, so all I needed to do was cut them out using my paper cutter. Next, you're just going to want to tape this piece of paper to the tin can, and then using some double-sided roll-on tape, you can just roll that onto the ends and the edge of the paper strip so that you can then adhere that to the can. There will be a slight overlap when the paper meets at the ends, but that's okay. You just want to line up those bands of color at the top and the bottom so that they match perfectly, and then it will give you just one solid colored line through the middle. Now, you could totally stop and leave it here, but I was feeling a little experimental, so I tried something here. It's up to you whether or not you want to do this step. So I decided to give everything a quick spray with some Faux Art Seal spray. Now, the reason why this step is optional is A, it does change the look of the paper, and also nowhere that I could find did it say that this product was flammable, but I also didn't find anything that said it wasn't flammable, so again, user beware. And I just went in with that Faux Art Seal and put the can on something to elevate it, and then on a turntable, and gave the whole thing a quick spray. Some of the seal spray will get on the bottom of the can, no big deal, just grab a wet rag and give that a quick little wipe. Now off camera, I just melted some soy candle wax, and then here I'm just letting it cool, and while it cools, I'm adding some wicks to the center of my tin, and then using some chopsticks, I'm just using that to center the wick so that it'll stand upright in the middle. And then once my wax had cooled to the proper temp, I just slowly poured that into each of the tin cans. And then I set that aside and let it cool until the wax had hardened, and then I just trimmed off the wicks, and there you go. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. For this next DIY, you're going to need 3 salmon tin cans, and the reason you're going to want these instead of tuna tin cans is because the salmon cans are a bit deeper. And just like with the tuna cans we did in the last DIY, you're just going to want to remove those labels, and if you find that the paper sticks to the tin, Goo Gone. Everybody needs a little Goo Gone in their life. Just spray it onto whatever's sticking, let it sit for a bit, and then wipe it away with a damp cloth. Okay, next you're going to want any type of white spray paint. It can be matte, chalk, shiny, it doesn't matter. It just needs to be white. And you're going to want to give each of these tin cans a quick spray of that white spray paint. You don't need to be perfect with this. You're going to see why in a bit, but you just want to get those tin cans covered so that you can't see any of the shiny tin and all you can see is the white. And then set those aside so that they completely dry. Because next we're going to go in with a little bit of Rust-Oleum's Faux Bleach Stone spray paint. Now, this faux stone spray isn't the easiest to work with, so I'm going to give you a few tips. First, give it a really good shake. You want the nozzle to be a fair distance from the object, and you're going to apply it in short bursts, 1 layer at a time. If you find it didn't apply thickly enough, don't try and cover that up right away. If you do, it'll just spread the first layer and you'll end up with a bigger mess than you started. And then let that dry thoroughly, even overnight. Then you can go in again with that spray and cover any of the areas where you found it didn't cover quite enough the first go around. Now you could leave it like this and have 3 of the same, but I decided to go in with a Rust-Oleum Faux Stone spray paint that's in a darker color. I believe it's called Cyan Desert, I want to say. I could be wrong about that. Maybe if you know the name, you could just leave it in the comments below. But I'm just going to use this to do 2 different looks on 2 of the cans. So one I left with the bleach stone. The next one I sprayed quite a bit with this Cyan color. And then on the third one, I just lightly did the cyan color and then went over again with a bit of the bleach stone. Now in hindsight, I missed a step here. I meant to spray this with some Rust-Oleum finishing spray, and I would highly recommend you do so because this spray paint isn't exactly 100% waterproof. And while those were drying, I popped on over to Home Depot and picked up a few succulents. I actually picked up more succulents than I'll actually need for this DIY, but that's okay. I'm sure I'll find another use for the others. Out of those succulents, I picked these 3 to go in our tuna tin cans. Now you could pop holes in the bottom of your tin cans, but I don't actually want these to leak out, so I'm going to put some stones at the bottom. Now the middle one is the amount of stones you want. The other 2, I put too much. Now while I was at Home Depot, I also picked up this bag of Miracle-Gro succulent and cactus soil mix, but as you'll see here, it turns out I didn't actually need it, but that's okay. I'll use it in something later on. And all you're going to want to do is pop those succulents out of their pots and just gently remove the soil from the bottom part of the pot. You want to be careful with the roots, but the pot that the Home Depot one came in was too deep for the tin cans, and honestly, the roots didn't really reach all the way down to the bottom, and they'll be fine. And I just did this to each of the 3 succulents, adding them gently into their pots. Lightly press them down into the tin cans and then just water them in. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, Jenny, I'm not doing real succulents, I got you back. Make over the tin cans the same way we did for the real succulents, but this time, instead of going in with soil, you're just going to use a little bit of Dollar Tree floral foam. And just cut off a bit of that floral foam so that it'll fit perfectly into the tin cans. Now, this is a succulent from Dollar Tree, but really you can find them at Dollarama, IKEA, the thrift store. You can find ones that are very realistic looking, but honestly, for $1.25, this to me looks pretty good. And then it's really as easy as just popping that succulent into the floral foam and then going in with a few of those river rocks, little stones. You can find those at the dollar store as well, and just covering up that floral foam so that you can't see it. And here it is in a non-living version if that's more your speed. And if you're liking these DIYs so far, make sure you give me a thumbs up and let me know in the comments below. And here they are all finished and complete. For this next super simple DIY, in fact, this is the simplest of them all. And just like before, you're going to want to remove all of the labels from 3 of the larger cans. And we're going in with another one of my printables. You can find these 3 printables at the At Jenny's Place library as well. And I simply printed them out onto regular printing paper and then cut that down with my paper trimmer. Now, each of these beautiful printables have been made to fit perfectly around the larger size can, but you can trim these up to fit basically any sized can you want, or just use them for something else. At the back of each of the tin cans, there's a line down the middle, and you just want to line your paper up against that and then just simply tape it down with a little bit of Scotch tape. And again, using some of that roll-on double-sided tape, just roll it along the edges of both sides of the paper and along the bottom. This is because in these larger tin cans, they're not completely smooth, and so the only place that's really going to adhere properly is along those edges. Roll the paper around the outside of the tin so that it perfectly lines up both top and bottom, making sure that the message is centered in the front of the tin can. To keep things simple, I just taped the edges down again on the outside with a little bit of clear masking tape. If you prefer, you could use Mod Podge. I love how easy these pencil holders were to make, and I especially love their beautiful sayings. Okay, this next DIY is a little bit more involved. And once again, you're going to need 3 of the larger size tin cans. Glue gun on any of this stuck on adhesive if needed. Then I headed out to the garage because I'm going to give each of these tin cans a quick spray with some Rust-Oleum copper metal, faux metal spray paint. And again, just like with the succulent tin cans, this doesn't need to be done perfectly. You just want to get those tin cans completely covered on the outside and the bottoms, and you want to give that a nice spray so that it just coats the entire thing. Then just set those aside and let them dry completely. You're going to want some navy blue chalk paint. I'm just using Folk Arts chalk paint in Nautical, and then a lighter blue paint. I'm going in with Craft Smart chalk paint in Blue Dusk. Now we're going to be blending these paints, so I recommend putting them in smaller containers, one in each, and that way you don't have to worry about cross-contaminating in the entire jar. Using a stenciling brush, just pounce some of that navy blue chalk paint onto the copper tin can. There really is no rhyme to reason to this. I would just suggest that you work in smaller patches and let the paint tell you where it wants to go. And once you've applied some of that navy blue, go in next with some of that lighter blue color and soften up that darker navy blue, adding bits here and there. Again, there is no right or wrong to this. It's whatever just looks good to you. And if you found that you've softened it up a little bit too much with the lighter paint, just go back in with some of that darker blue paint and add some of it as well. And you're just going to want to apply the same painting technique to all 3 of your cans. Next, you're going to want to go in with a little bit of Art Minds metallic copper chalk paint, and using a fan brush, you're just going to want to apply this sort of all over the can. The chalk paint has more of a matte finish, so it's less shiny than the spray paint, and it also helps to sort of blend those blue colors into the tin can, almost making it look like the rust is sort of forming over the blue. Now, I'm not quite sure yet if I'm going to be using this indoors or outdoors, so I decided to go in with a little bit of the Mod Podge outdoor, but if you know for sure you're going to be keeping this inside, you could just use regular Mod Podge. And using an old paintbrush, you just want to apply that Mod Podge to the outside of your can, again, randomly. You just want to work this into different areas, a little bit over the blue, covering up any of the shiny bits, focusing some of your attention along the rim and the bottom of the can, because we're going to use this Mod Podge to adhere cinnamon to our tin can. I just love the realistic appearance that cinnamon gives to any sort of object to make it look rusty. So again, working in smaller patches, just sprinkle the cinnamon over top of the Mod Podge and then lightly tap it off. Now this time I didn't forget to go in with that Rust-Oleum finishing spray. So you're going to want to use a can of this, especially if you're going to be keeping this piece outdoors. And I just gave the whole can a couple of coats of this finishing spray, and I've left this outside for several days in the rain and the sun for like over a week, and the cinnamon just stays in place. It works perfectly fine. And there we have the finishing look. I'm dying to know, what do you guys think? And we're down to the can of corn. Just like before, remove the label from the tin can and use any of the Glue Gun if needed. For this tin can DIY, you're going to need some twine rope and a hot glue gun. And you're just going to attach your twine to the bottom part of your tin can with the hot glue all the way around the rim. And then once you've attached it around the bottom of the rim, you can just start wrapping that twine around. You no longer need to use more hot glue. Just make sure that when you're wrapping the twine around, you're doing it quite tightly so that you can't see any of the tin metal showing through. And keep wrapping it around like this until you reach the top rim of your tin can, and then you're going to want to go in again with a bit more of that hot glue around the top of the rim to finish adhering the twine. And then just to give it a finishing touch, I went in with a bit more of the hot glue at the very top of the rim and then placed the twine on top of that so you could no longer see the metal top. Now, even though I don't live anywhere near an ocean, I love collecting beach glass. So I actually have quite an extensive collection of beach glass that I've collected over the years. And some of these pieces are absolutely stunning. Here, let me show you a few. But for this DIY, I'm just going to use 5 of my basic white glass pieces and 1 of my darker green. And using some hot glue, I'm just going to adhere these and a couple of seashells to the front of the twine wrapped tin can in order to form a flower with a couple of leaves. Now when I was done, I found it a bit plain, so I decided to go in with some white rope and just wrap that around with some hot glue to the bottom of the tin can. And then I added some wooden beads, 3 of them, for little feet. And then I just popped in a faux greenery from Dollar Tree, and there you have it. I think this is so adorable. What do you think? If you enjoyed that, make sure you subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. If you hit the notification bell, it'll let you know the next time I upload. Oh, and you might enjoy these.